Banele Lukhele, CEO of the JGF Fellowship, in a short while. A very important conversation she proposes needs to be had, and we will have it as South Africa gears up for the matric finals. Banele says our teachers are burnt out, fed up, and half are desperate to leave the profession. With little support, they are being tested to breaking point, and the consequences for learner outcomes are grave. That conversation after these. Banele Lukhele, welcome, CEO of the JGF Fellowship. It's always just such a privilege to be able to chat with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Banele, you're suggesting that behind every matric student is a teacher writing their own silent exams. Let us into the silent exams that they are writing.
Yes, I think the burden of the matric results. So by that point, a lot of the educators have really gotten to know these individuals personally and understand that context. And so the successes of their learners are their successes, and the failures of their learners are their failures. And the commentary, the public commentary on the matric results, sometimes coming from a good place, but with a lack of knowledge, can feel personal. And so you have educators who are really trying their best to ensure that they support their learners, and yet nobody's supporting them. And so we thought it was a very important conversation to bring to South Africans.
Yeah, I think it is an important conversation. So if you're pointing negatively at the teacher in respect of the exams written by the learners, there are at least three fingers pointing back at you, because the buck stops with you, is there not?
Yes, that is correct. We all have a vested interest in how our schools are working, but really the way that teachers are put at the bottom of the conversation is, for me, unacceptable, and for JGF Fellowship, unacceptable. And so understanding the role we play in creating a conducive environment for teachers is an important conversation to have.
And it's going to be a difficult thing to create that conducive environment, given our very many socioeconomic challenges in this country.
Yes, it is. And that's why collective effort is so important. So you speak about, or many people speak about, the levels of crime in schools, and that's covered by a different area or group of expertise. We speak about infrastructure, that's a group of expertise. Delivery of textbooks is a group of expertise. And so the importance of coming together to ensure that we understand the depth of the problem and that we have the right people solving the right problem is one of the biggest pushes that we can make.
Yeah.
But even as a small step is just making sure that when you are speaking to a teacher, you're speaking to them with respect, understanding that they're a professional and they genuinely do want the learner to succeed as well. Education is not a trick. We're all trying to get learners to where they become active participants in education. And so just thinking about and being mindful of how you engage with teachers. And with World Teacher Day coming up, maybe even writing a nice little note to acknowledge the burden that they're carrying or the role that they play in society.
It's absolutely an important conversation to have. Just the question, the judgment. Does the judgment reside in the success rate of the learner? Is it directly commensurate with the success rate, the judgment of the teacher?
Yes, I do think so. I think a lot has been put on the percentage, and a lot of people have a direct link between teachers and teacher practice and the percentage. But we know that nutrition, a healthy environment, a safe environment, all those things play a role. But unfortunately, it is directly linked to the educators, and so the pressure comes from that. But really just acknowledging and trying to be more mindful in how we engage teachers, and for teachers to hear that there are people who are thinking about them and supporting them and trying to create a conducive environment for them.
In a society where the politicians, to enable better statistics, better success rates, have dumbed down the syllabus or the curriculum.
Yeah, with the curriculum, with the CAPS documents, there is room for the educator to bring in or bring to life what it is that they need to bring to life. And I think that's why JGF Fellowship really wants to ensure that we empower educators to do that. The curriculum itself gives a scope of knowledge that needs to be understood, but it doesn't prescribe how that knowledge is understood and contextualized and applied. And so, yes, the curriculum can be a complex and really diverse, longer conversation. But I think if we have organizations and a big intentional drive to empower educators, and also empower parents and other stakeholders of schools to understand how it actually plays out. The conversations will be more constructive. They won't be finger pointing and blaming. We will actually all be leaning towards solving the issues in schools.
Is it within the teacher's discretion to maybe present an easy exam paper?
Well, no. Educators are not necessarily directly linked to the matric exam that their students will be writing. So Umalusti and Sakai and IUP have very, very stringent processes in developing the papers. However, it is within the educator's scope to ensure that they develop an understanding or a mastery of content that will allow the learner to engage constructively with the paper. So you hope that the method in which you have taught and that teaching and learning has been happening. But as I mentioned earlier, the matric results are a culmination of everything you've learned over 12 years. It's unfortunate that the pressure falls on one set of educators, which are your FET educators. And so also being mindful of the work that is being done in foundation phase, it's a deep need in intermediate and senior phase, so that by the time we get to these matric results, we already have leading indicators of where the challenges are, and we empower the FET teachers to really fill the gaps as opposed to trying to cover 12 years of learning, of falling behind, learners who have fallen behind.
And we speak to teachers often. Banele Lukhele, our guest CEO of the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship, and we feel their exasperation and their frustration. And they're not really asking for an increase even. Life is tough. They should be demanding an increase. What is it that they're asking for?
They're asking for support, acknowledgement, and really a grappling of environmental issues that are outside of their scope. Teachers really do their best to make sure that their classrooms are a safe environment for learning and that they prioritize teaching and learning for the learners in front of them that day. Because year on year, it's a different experience, and day on day, it's a different experience. And so if we really come together to understand the need, the contextual need for teachers, and respond to those needs, they will then be empowered to be the best versions of themselves in the classroom. From our engagements with teachers, that's really what they want. They really want somebody who will coach them, mentor them, empower them, acknowledge them, recognize them, so that they are almost given the authority that they deserve for people who are training the future South Africans. So that's a lot of what we hear, and really just keeping the right people accountable for what they need to do in terms of systemic and policy development.
And it's taken its toll. It's literally taken its toll. Mental health, you propose in this article, comes to bear on many teachers. And that must really make their job difficult.
It does. I mean, you don't quite go to sleep and forget what happened in your classroom, particularly when you have learners who have experienced trauma or if you're in under-resourced environments. And so also just acknowledging that a teacher doesn't actually clock out, contrary to popular belief. And you have these experiences which are often spoken about humorously, but walking in the mall and the student is like, "Hi, mister," "Oh, hi, miss." You never really stop. And I don't think people understand what that means. It means that you don't ever clock out of your career. And as you said, that's not the burden that they bear. The burden that they bear is that people aren't acknowledging that position that they have in society and supporting and celebrating that position that they have in society.
Yeah, they've probably taken that child that is at risk up them into their sleep as well. You say, to put it bluntly, our teachers are tired of being treated like they must just push through, especially during high pressure. And yet each and every year teachers are expected to give more and more. And I think I've asked the question differently a little earlier. What is it in practical terms, beyond the salary that we are required to do as individuals, as communities, and as government?
Well, as individuals, as I mentioned, I think the engagement you have with educators should be respectful. It should understand that they are professionals and they are experts in what they do. And so engaging them with that understanding and an investment in the learner who is the ultimate beneficiary. So that's usually between parents and teachers and sometimes community members. In terms of school management teams, really creating an environment that is conducive for staggered and ongoing progress in work, and not having these pressure points that feel unreasonable, and just logically there's not enough capacity to complete that work. Joining initiatives that support to relieve administration, partnering with NGOs who are supporting and empowering teachers in their development. Those are some of the activities that school management teams could do. In terms of government on a district, provincial, and a national level, it is really being intentional about responding to the context, implementation, and ensuring that implementation solves the problem we've identified where we need to strengthen. And so there can be targeted data drives to ensure that there's data-driven decision. They can be partnering with NGOs to ensure that the capacity for implementation is there, and there must be a drive for documentation so that we are able to make improvements as we move along with implementation.
Yeah, we had a conversation last week about bullying in classrooms. And I think the conclusion that we drew there was that emotional intelligence plays such an important role in a professional teacher's life as well, in dealing with the very many kind of issues that they're confronting in that particular classroom. And I see you've identified emotional intelligence as an important, and I'm quoting, a core theme. How can we equip or better equip teachers with that intelligence?
So again, I think are linked to professional development opportunities, which don't always have to be a workshop. So there are apps, there are programs that senior management teams can run to ensure that there is a consistent integration into the culture of identifying activities that can promote emotional intelligence. I do also want to signal that it can be difficult to lean on emotional intelligence when you are depleted or burnt out. And so I think having that grace for a teacher, particularly in peak periods where they are just unable to function at their prime because of the pressure that they are under. So affording that grace, giving them this opportunity to develop that skill, and mentor and coaching can actually play a pivotal role there. People who have had experience in the environment naturally develop the habit, and so they could then help impart this to newly qualified teachers and novice teachers.
And again, emotional intelligence, because all of this is about emotional intelligence. It's about passing or failing. It's about black or white. And this is the pressure that comes to bear from a society that measures things in black and white. And we should not necessarily perceive it as that. If you are unsuccessful, then you are not really fully equipped yet to take on a life in the economy. Isn't that the conclusion that we must have?
Well, one would think that that's the conclusion you would have, but I think when we speak about emotional intelligence, you kind of get the data which presents as black and white, and it's often quantitative. And then you go into the qualitative, where you're trying to understand, how do I feel about what I'm seeing now? So as a learner, I see that I fail. How do I feel about it? I'm feeling despondent. But then you go into, what are the actions that I can take to move myself forward? This is telling me that I'm not ready to participate in the economy, but maybe I'm not ready to participate academically in the economy. Can I do vocational? Can I do occupational? Can I rewrite? Potentially there was a trauma that happened and that's why my marks went down. What are the things that I can engage with that can move me forward? And often educators are at the forefront of that conversation when the matric results come out. And so again, just empowering them to have those conversations in a constructive way, but also the debrief, because when you are carrying the burden of others, you genuinely wear it on your shoulders. And so there needs to be that opportunity for teachers to take that coat off and debrief from what it is that they have experienced, so that they can go back out and start the academic year in a fresh mind. Also, this overlap between the matric results being released and term one starting is becoming a bit of a complexity in how you manage the start of your year. It almost feels like you kick off your year in a very heavy cloud of the matric results, and so ensuring that doesn't set the tone for the year.
Banele Lukhele, CEO of the Jakes Fellowship. I want everybody to read what you have written, especially a teacher. It is not only affirming, but we need to love you more. We're going to find means to do that. Where can they find this piece that you have written?
Well, this piece was actually written by one of our teacher coaches, Londiwe Majola, and so it can be found in the Mail and Guardian. It was written as an op-ed, and you'll also be able to link to a lot of our commentary and initiatives on LinkedIn, Jake's Cabo Fellowship, or also on Instagram and Facebook.
Your words as we close off, while we cheer on the 700,000 plus learners preparing to sit their final matric exams next month, let us also focus on the teachers who stay up past midnight marking, who sacrifice weekends for extra lessons and who quietly absorb the stress so that their learners don't have to. This time is as much about them as it is about matrics. Thank you for that reminder, Banele, and as always, your time is appreciated.